What is up and welcome into the block. I've got my guys, Reed, Blake Brockermeyer here ready to talk some college ball. The boys are back, ladies and gentlemen. We had Blake Brockermeyer, probably on the Brockermeyer family private jet, choosing some tropical golf course to go to. I was out in Fort Lauderdale, Florida with our crew at CBS Sports HQ, going through a beautiful week of training. I know that sounds fun. So the rock of our group, and I know that's a little exaggeration, but Carl Reed, my man, you held it down. Now we can officially say the crew is back ready to talk some college sports. Before we get into today's show, you at home, like, share, subscribe here on the YouTube channel as we build the block from the ground up. Where do I want to start, gentlemen? A little bit of breaking news, if you will. The first AP poll of the season is out, and I want to know how you guys are reacting. I want to go to you first, Blake. General takeaways as we go through the AP Top 25.
I thought Notre Dame is ranked a little bit high. They got to open with Ohio State, which is going to be a tough game for them, and then they play Clemson and USC among some other tough teams that they play during the season. So I think they're a little too high in my opinion, just because I'm not sure who their go-to wide receivers are going to be. That was already going to be an issue, and then they had an ACL this week that in a scrimmage, which is going to really hurt them more. I think they've got 5 scholarship receivers now, so that's a big question mark for me. And then I think Tennessee should be ranked. I'm really surprised that they're not in the top 25. They've got a really tough schedule. They play Pitt, Georgia, LSU, and South Carolina on the road, and they got to play Bama and Kentucky at home. But they're a pretty good team this year, and I think that they'll be in the top 25 by the time the year's over with.
Never so much has one win done something for a school and a program the way that the Alabama win last year has helped Texas A&M stay at the top of the conference. The polls. I think that Texas A&M is a little bit overrated. They did not make it to the SEC championship game. They lost a couple of games that got away from them, and we seem to be really, really buying a lot of stock in the Texas A&M, but they haven't played in the conference tournament and a conference championship game yet. They're not competing at a national championship level. 4 losses a year ago, so I don't understand what all of the hype is. I know they had a great recruiting class, but this isn't basketball, this is football. And so we still haven't seen a whole group of freshmen come in and dominate the SEC West. I think it's tough for them. On the other side, I think a team that consistently gets underrated is the University of Iowa. And I understand that Iowa is not sexy. They don't run an RPO spread offense where they're chalking it all over the field. They are just the model of consistency. Power run game, solid defense, big tight ends and H-backs, offensive line. No matter what year it is, Kirk Ferentz always has the Iowa Hawkeyes there in the conversation at the end. I think Iowa's a tad bit underrated. They should be in the top 25.
Yeah, Iowa at a minimum usually wins 8 games or more. So you would think that they would be up there a little bit higher. And then I agree with you on Texas A&M. I think their next year is going to be the year where they could maybe make a jump, and we'll see what happens with that and who they can keep and the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff. But I think they're a year away, but I do think that they're going to have a pretty good team this year. Going to Tuscaloosa is going to be their tough test of the year, obviously.
Blake, we in the polls and in college football, we always discredit Iowa for being that consistent program that's right at 8 wins. But we want to build Kentucky's football program a statue and make them the yellow brick road, So I don't understand the disrespect for the University of Iowa. They've had a great program for a long time, and I think that they do deserve a little bit more respect.
Should have yet another shot to appear in the Big Ten title game this year. So I've got your overrated teams. I've got your underrated teams. Now I want to point out a couple of storylines potentially as we go over this AP Top 25. And guys, I want to put you on the spot by starting with the Pac-12. 3 teams in the top 15. Utah, Oregon, USC in there. Carl, going to you. Did this catch you by surprise? Should the Trojans be up there with Utah and Oregon?
No, it didn't catch me by surprise. Lincoln Riley's brought a lot of excitement. You add Caleb Williams, you add Jordan Addison from Pittsburgh, and also you added Eric Gentry, an edge rusher from Arizona State. They got some big time transfers, a lot of excitement in USC. Not surprised that they're in the top 15, and we already knew that Oregon and Utah both had solid ball clubs. There's no surprises in there for me in those moves.
Yeah, Utah's the team to keep an eye on in the Pac-12, in my opinion. I think that they have a team that can do some damage. They got depth. They've got a good offensive line, a good quarterback, well-coached team on both sides of the ball. That's the team that I expect to win the Pac-12. I would expect Oregon to probably finish second, and I think USC is going to make some noise this year, and they're going to be on the rise. I think defensively, I've got some questions on USC, but that's why we play the game. We'll see how it looks like on the field here coming up here in a few weeks, and it'll be exciting to see what Lincoln Riley can do out there in year one.
All right, so as we talk about 3 Pac-12 teams, I want to put you on the spot again, gentlemen. The top 3 teams in this AP poll, pretty much chalk, right? We've got Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia within that order. I do want to know, though, of that group, Carl, going to you again, who is your favorite to win the national championship entering the 2022 season?
I think the University of Alabama. I think that they're highly motivated. I think that Nick Saban is locked in, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback back. Key transfers across the board. I think the University of Alabama is going to play Ohio State in the national championship game this year. And I think all the marbles go to Alabama. And I think that some interesting questions get asked at the end of the season if the University of Alabama wins another national championship with the changing landscape of college football. Does Nick Saban look to leave out on top if the Crimson Tide wins another national championship?
I think it's going to come down to injuries, but Alabama is the team to beat. I would bet money that either Ohio State or Alabama is going to win it this year, and it'll come down to key injuries. I mean, that's the name of the game. As you saw this weekend, there were some teams that lost some critical players, and if either one of those teams were to lose a couple of key contributors, then that could be the season for them. But Alabama's got a lot of depth on both sides of the ball. Their special teams unit is exceptional. They've got a really good punter and a kicker as well. So they're pretty much as loaded as you can get from top to bottom, in my opinion.
Speaking of losing key players, Blake Brockermeyer, like a pro. Let's talk fall camp intel and injuries, starting with the Texas Longhorns. Some developments out of Austin as they are expected to lose some key contributors on the offensive side of the ball following a scrimmage. Blake, this is tough news. How does this impact Texas's outlook entering the 2022 season?
Well, it doesn't help for sure. I mean, Texas has got obviously more players than they've got injured for the year, but they're going to have the next guy step up. That's the name of the game in college football. Losing Isaiah Nayor is going to be a blow, because I think he was poised to have a breakout year for them. Keep a little bit of pressure off Xavier Worthy. They're going to have some freshmen, some young guys step up. One guy that I haven't heard much about to maybe keep an eye on is an Iowa State transfer that they got kind of under the radar at the buzzer, and Tyreek Milton. He's had some production. Maybe he can step up for them. So it hurts them. They've got some other guys that are dinged up, but I think they've got depth. They've got some young players. I think offensive line wise, they were going to start 2 or 3 young guys anyway, and so this just helps speed up that process. And they maybe take a few lumps this season, but down the road this will pay off for them.
Everybody wants to have depth until they have to use it. A couple of key injuries here. You never want to see this. It's bad for the players, but I think the program survives. I think Texas does have enough guys in the cupboard where the guys they lost, they can overcome it as long as none of the other guys get hurt or you have significant injuries. They are going to need those freshman offensive linemen to step up and play like veterans this year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Texas. But I do think that they can overcome these injuries and still have a successful season if they don't lose any more key guys along the way.
The
All
key for Texas is they cannot lose Bijan Robinson. That is their team. That is their offense. Everything goes through him. If he's out for an extended period of time, then that's going to be a problem for Texas because they've got some nice depth at running back, but no one that's like Bijan. I mean, he is a difference maker, first round pick, one of the top running backs, if not the top running back in college football. So that's the key person that Texas has got to keep healthy this year.
A lot of pressure shifting over to Xavier Worthy, too, I'd say. Now all eyes turn to Kelvin Banks, Devon Campbell, Cole Hudson, and Ajayi Hall as they try and fill in some of this production lost for the year. Let's talk about some production going into the year in Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish naming Tyler Buchner the starting quarterback heading into the season, and all eyes turn to him as a potential dual threat who can add an element to the Fighting Irish offense that might challenge even in week 1 against Ohio State. Carl, I want to go to you first. How might Tyler Buchner help the Fighting Irish meet expectations and help out Marcus Freeman, who's now going to be the head coach out there?
Well, anytime you have a guy that's a dual threat that can run, it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the defense, especially in your zone read, power read concepts, and some of your RPO game stuff. I do think Ohio State is still going to be the favorite to win that first game, but I think that they do have a quarterback now in Notre Dame that they feel comfortable going with. I've always been the kind of guy, though, that believes in those big-time games, no matter how good a quarterback can run and how athletic he is, it's going to come down to whether he can drop back in the pocket and make plays in the passing game with his arm against the coverage of Ohio State and take the pass rush. Being able to run the football is good, but at the highest level, you still have to be able to win by throwing the football.
Yeah, Notre Dame's got a really good offensive line. They're going to be running the football a bunch this year. Michael Mayer is probably one of the top 2 tight ends in the country. I would expect to see him split out more as a wide receiver. They do that anyway, but now with the loss they took this weekend, I think you'll see more of that with Notre Dame. So they're going to have to be physical, smash mouth team. They've got the talent to do it on their offensive line. And then, their defense is going to have to play great to pull off an upset week 1. But I think having a dual threat quarterback is good. Hopefully he's smart to know when he needs to get down, get out of bounds, don't take any extra hits, because when you're a running quarterback, you put yourself in danger if you're not aware of the circumstances and situations around you.
Blake, do you really think that Notre Dame can play well enough on defense to slow down that Ohio State offense? I mean, they just loaded for bear over there.
I mean, I think Ohio State's going to win the game, but if you're going to upset a team, the first week of the season is usually a good time to do it. Marcus Freeman's a defensive guy, so I mean, I'm sure they'll have some different stuff in. I would not expect them to win week 1, but I am curious on what their scheme's going to look like and just kind of how they're going to try to stop the weapons that Ohio State has, because they're, as we all know, they're loaded on offense, probably have the best offense in the country.
I will say the Oregon Ducks would like a word reminding us that upsets are possible against Ohio State. Now, we do know that Jim Knowles is pretty good about creating simulated pressure, blitz packages, throwing quarterbacks off schedule. I think that'll be a defining moment for Tyler Buchner as we try to figure out if he can carry the Fighting Irish this season. Now, I do want to move to Clemson because the nation's best defensive line took a little bit of a hit. We are expecting Xavier Thomas to miss roughly 4 to 6 weeks up front. Suffers the injury, but obviously there's a lot of depth there on that defensive line, Carl, and obviously you've got a lot of depth, but once you have to use it, that changes a lot. How much does this change for Clemson when we talk about Xavier Thomas's injury?
I think they'll be able to get by the beginning part of their schedule, especially if he can make it back by the NC State game. You do have a situation here, though, that I think that I want to know who's the kid going to be listening to. You're talking about a first-round talent here. Hopefully, he comes back and plays the rest of the season with his team having a national championship on the line. because we've seen a lot lately when guys have the NFL on the line. Sometimes they look at sitting out and holding themselves back. So I know he's important for Clemson. If they're going to be able to beat teams like Alabama and Ohio State in the college football playoffs, they're going to need Xavier Thomas out there playing and running around.
Yeah, watching the spring game, KJ Henry flashed for me. I'm assuming that he'll come in and take the reps, now that he's out for 4 to 6 weeks. But, the problem with Clemson is they have some unproven players on the edge. And so, with Miles Murphy healthy and KJ Henry, I feel pretty good about that. Their inside has got a lot of depth, but they're going to have a young guy or someone that hasn't done it yet on the edge step up and help, give these guys a break during games. Because as you know, defense substitutes a lot, and they got to keep these guys fresh. So I'll be curious to see who can step up for them on the edge and give these guys a little bit of a break during the games. Because as you know, the first 2 games are generally the hardest games on your body, getting used to the heat, cramping, and all that kind of stuff. So you want to limit as many snaps as you can while you're getting your best players out there when you really need them to.
If there's one thing I'm not necessarily worried about, it's Clemson being okay on the defensive line. We will see, though, how Xavier Thomas fares as he rehabs from this injury. Gentlemen, I want to close with the Crimson Tide because we got a freshman wide receiver making some noise. He apparently stood out in the first scrimmage at Alabama as we build up towards the season. And look, the Crimson Tide needs some step up at wide receiver. I want to know, Blake, going to you first, what do we think about Kobe Prentice potentially as an option for Bryce Young in that Crimson Tide offense?
I think he's definitely an option. I think he's, obviously a little bit unproven coming in as a freshman. They have a lot of depth. They have a lot of guys that are talented players that, are going to have to step up. Someone's going to have to do it. And so, they'll find somebody that they've got, like I said, a handful of people to pick from. I don't want to get too excited about one scrimmage just because, you had a good scrimmage, but it is good to see some young guys step up, catch the football. I mean, that's the most important thing is they've got the quarterback in Bryce Young, obviously. He has to be comfortable with the receivers that are out there. He's got some veteran guys that are going to be big-time players for him, but they're going to need some depth, as you saw last year with the ACLs that they had late in the season, which really hurt them. So hopefully they can build some depth and get some young guys to step up. They got to know what to do. They got to know the hots, the checks, and kind of be in Bryce Young's, be in his brain. I mean, know what he's doing because you got to be on the same page, and that's something that last year didn't happen all the time.
Blake touched on this, a lot of receiver depth already there at the University of Alabama, but Kobe Prentice is showing big-time flashes that he could be a future star for the Crimson Tide. I would expect to see him playing in some sub packages early on because Coach Saban has been known over the years for rewarding the freshmen who have come in ready to play. And he raved about his appearance in the scrimmage this weekend. I would expect that we would see Kobe early in some packages, but I don't know to the extent with some of the receiver talent that Alabama has this year. But at some point, we will be hearing this young man's name a lot for the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Already lost JoJo Earle at wide receiver. If they can get anything out of Kobe Prentice, that's quite the ideal boost for a national title favorite. Now, our next segment is a sobering one. Police in the Dallas area city of Lancaster have issued a warrant for the arrest of Yaqub Talib in the Saturday night shooting of a coach at a youth football game in Texas. Yaqub Talib is the brother of Aqib Talib, a 5-time Pro Bowl cornerback in the NFL. Coaches with the youth team DEA Dragons identified the man killed as Coach Mike Hickman. WFAA in Dallas reports Carl and Blake. I know as fathers and former football players and coaches, the story hits close to home. Carl, I want to go to you first. How did we get here? How have youth sports completely derailed? And how have parents and some of these presences around it completely altered the way we perceive it?
Colin, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the people that are involved with youth sports, especially youth football. We have so many confrontations among the adults these adults, coaches and parents, they sit on social media all day in Facebook groups, disrespecting each other, being disrespectful to one another, and making the game about them. There's no understanding of why at a 9-year-old football game, people even have guns and where you have this type of altercation. So what does all the trash talking and the disrespect get us? It gets us a dead body. What does a dead body get us? It gets us a funeral. It gets us a 9-year-old kid who watched his dad get gunned down in cold blood in front of him. It leaves a group of 9-year-old kids on both teams. On both teams. They'll never forget this happened. It leaves them completely traumatized. I want everybody in this situation who was involved to be brought to justice. We have no place for this whatsoever in youth sports. And it needs to be some serious changes with the things that are going on in youth football, in youth sports, with the disrespecting of officials, with fist fighting, with guns at the game. Some people are serving alcohol. It just needs to be a complete overhaul. It's a shame. It's a travesty. A lot of these guys that are coaching, that are egging on these kind of situations, were guys who never were significant as players. And so they're living their lives through these kids. They're trying to be the next reality star on a show like Friday Night Tykes. It's absolutely ridiculous. This man did not deserve to lose his life over a Little League football game. And I hated to hear it. It's totally ridiculous. And we need to make changes nationwide across the board for how youth sports is going to be handled.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better myself. I mean, it's just a sad deal. I've coached youth football for a very long time and never experienced anything like that. But these parents are just out of control. I mean, not all of them, but there's a lot of parents that just, their life revolves around coaching their kids and getting their kids to the next level. And it's just a reflection of society with the disrespect, bringing guns to a youth league game. I mean, you see these little league baseball games where these kids are, on the ground, there's shootings around in high school games. It's a sad day. It's sad for our society that these kids have to go through this. And it's heartbreaking to me that these 9-year-old kids have already, witnessed, a coach and a father figure get murdered in front of them. So it's just heartbreaking all the way around, and a lot of changes need to be made. But it's heartbreaking to see that, especially here locally where I live.
We'll continue to follow the situation at 247sports.com. More details emerging, and you can stay tuned to that with any local Dallas media affiliate. Obviously, it's a touchy subject, but Carl, I think you did an awesome job of touching on it, and Blake, the same to you as well. You at home, want more of this? You go ahead and subscribe here on the YouTube page. Keep up with the block. We are so close to college football season. That's the good news, and we will keep you updated right here on the block as we build up towards the 2022 season. Gentlemen, it's always fun. You at home, check these two out on Twitter, then head to 247sports.com for all things college football.